Hi friends, welcome to the NPTEL course Strategy and Technology, a Practical Primer. We are in week 7 with the theme of Dynamic Strategy Equilibrium. In this lecture, the 35th in the series, we discuss the topic of technology and collaboration. The word competitive is ingrained in the phrase competitive strategy. The world is full of competition. Yet we have seen in our previous lectures that it could be self-annihilating to try to pursue competition only for the goal of competition. We also need to have a situation where industries are healthy, viable, and financially capable of growing. That is the essence of all-round development and also benefit to society. In resource-scarce countries such as India, it is also important that whatever resources are available are deployed in the best manner possible and not wasted on unhealthy competition. Therefore, we need to look at competitive strategy in a light that enables growth and not growth at the cost of all others in the industry. As I have mentioned in one of the earlier lectures, collaboration is one of the important strategic forces that can help a competitive strategy be a helpful strategy for firms to grow while also enabling the industry to grow. So I have a theory of generic collaboration strategy which proposes that firms can maximize their performance through collaboration both within industry and across industries. Surely monopolies are a feature of the past. Technologies are evolving faster than ever and they are also getting commoditized faster than ever. Forces of collaboration as outlined in this lecture will stem from 5 factors: co-integration, co-development, co-fulfillment, co-direction, and co-saturation. And these aspects will happen between the product manufacturer and the component makers. It could happen also between the component maker and the material suppliers. In fact, it could happen between any one unifying party and several supporting parties. Collaborative competition elevates the game for all the players in the industry and serves the customers with more and better products and services. I would therefore propose in this lecture that collaboration is as important as competition. Competition has certain limits. What do you achieve through competition? You would achieve 100% market share, but beyond that what? Nothing else. But society needs to be served not only with 100% of occupancy through market share, it has to be served through better products and services. This principle is almost akin to a student trying to get more than 100. It is not feasible. 100 is the top level of mark that is set. After achieving 100 what? It is the knowledge. The more knowledge a student has, the more capable he would be or she would be in life. Knowledge adds stature to the individual. Experience adds stature to the leader. Similarly, extra competencies add stature to the organization. It is not all about succeeding over another individual or succeeding over another company or just meeting a benchmark. It is all about accumulating more critical mass of core competencies. And in this process, collaboration is a very good strategy that complements a competitive strategy. Therefore, while competition is an integral part of business, firms will do well to accord due importance to collaboration, and that will help a balance between resource density of ceaseless competition and resource protection of healthy collaboration. Then it will be possible for firms as well as the industry to grow together meaningfully and synergistically. As I said, Michael Porter's strategic framework has been rooted in the idea of competition. Competitive strategy framework implicitly postulates that the big aggressive world of business competition is all about the survival of the fittest. He prescribed 3 generic strategies: cost leadership, differentiation, and niche for companies to compete on strategy and derive competitive advantage in an industry. We have also seen that execution is extremely important. 2 firms following the same broad generic strategy may not have the same results at the end of the strategic journey because execution could be different. Porter's strategic prescription is so easy to follow that companies may be tempted to accept that and universally implement. However, not all companies will be equally successful in deployment of this strategy. We have also seen why it is so. Because these strategies only provide very broad generic overview of the philosophy of the strategy and not necessarily the nuts and bolts of the strategy. So while keeping this competitive strategy as proposed and as modified by us in terms of various other factors which we have discussed, including economic forces and the strategic initiatives, and as well as these concepts such as strategic balancing, strategic responders, strategic comparators, which we have proposed in an original fashion in this lecture, we should also look at collaboration as being as essential as competition. So, generic competitive strategy is an extremely firm-centric approach. It asks the firm to enhance its performance by maximizing its competitive power vis-a-vis all the other powers of the industry stakeholders, be they the suppliers, customers, new entrants, substitute products, and industry players. At least one of these aspects, I said, was not very well thought about or proposed. I mean, companies exist for customers. We can't think of customers having competitive power against the company. In fact, whatever the customers demand is for the good of the company eventually, because by trying to meet the superior expectations of the customers, a company would only improve itself and become better as an industrial player and as a social player. So we have to look at this generic competitive strategy from a different perspective, because successful performance or competitive advantage is not merely and solely related to either competitive strategy per se or its execution. It is even more importantly linked to collaboration. When customers come into a store to buy products, it is not for competition, it is for collaboration. Similarly, when a firm conducts design thinking with the customer to find out how a new chair should be ergonomically designed, it is not competition, it is collaboration. Therefore, if you look at collaborative strategy as an equally important generic collaborative strategy, you will find that it has got three important highlights. One, it drives up value for firms and the industry as a whole. Two, it refreshes industry-oriented approach to something which is more long-lasting and more broad-based than winning over the competitors. And it also advises a firm to maximize its performance by optimizing its collaborative network, not only within the industry but also across a broad range of industries. The need for a firm to be competitive will never go away. However, the need for a firm to be competitive by optimizing its network collaboratively is now greater than ever before. This is the essence of the generic collaborative strategy. The life cycle of a product or the life cycle of an industry drives collaboration. Earlier, because the products were few and far between, companies could have monopoly power for a long time. It is no longer necessary and it is no longer feasible. The original equipment manufacturer and vendor relations are likely to keep on changing as more end product companies come into the being and also as more component makers come into the industry. So there is nothing which is set that this is the fixed structure of the industry and this is how we need to play the game with each other, not against each other, with each other. Second, the competitive strategy traditionally considered that the industry boundaries are pretty and severely limited. It considered new products and new entrants as being industry antagonist rather than as consumer protagonist. That is, if you get a new industry product, that industry is under threat. That is how the view of threat of new entrants, threat of substitute products pans out. It doesn't look at such a product being helpful to the consumer. Therefore, it is fulfilling for the industry a purpose which the industry itself could not fulfill. The reason for Porter's competitive strategy viewing substitute products and new entrants as threat to industrial stability is somewhat misplaced in today's situation. It should have been looked at as being enablers for market expansion. The theory considered industry evolution from a monopoly state to a fragmented state as a phenomenon to be controlled by powerful incumbent firms. It doesn't consider this as one of new firms adding to consumer choice as much as to industry competition. It is all seen in terms of the industry dynamics, in terms of the firm capabilities, firm financial performance. But consumer is benefiting through new entries and new substitute products. So the status quo of large firms wielding a high level of competitive power and dominating the industry is something which is probably not in tune with current expectations that the society must be served well, broadly, and in the best manner possible. If you look at the collaborative strategy as proposed by me in a generic fashion, you will see the relevance in a contemporary industry environment, and it has three theoretical promises which are positively futuristic. It recognizes that monopolies are a thing of the past, even though sales and scale continue to offer economies. As a corollary, it views the OEM and vendor relations in terms of mutual dependence rather than one of conflicting power play. The second point is that it considers new products and new entrants as market expansive for the industry and not threatening for the industry. Even if the shares of the firms, that is the market shares or profit shares of the company, reduce, it won't be seen as a negative factor in the context of the overall social and economic development. It will be seen as a timed and coordinated launch of new products as being supportive of market expansion in the long run and beneficial to the customer interest in the short run. It is not seen as an industry destabilizing factor. And most importantly, how does collaboration happen? It is not through just alliances, networks, or mutually shared viewpoints. It is through technology. Technology is the factor, and one which is so widely available in the current space that it could lead to early formation of oligopoly. As an associate concept, it continuously seeks resegmentation and restructuring of industry to counter fragmentation. But for technology, you would not be getting the kind of market segmentation that you are seeing, because markets can always be segmented in terms of demographics, psychographics, and various other factors. But for that segmentation to sustain itself, you need products, and products are possible only with technology. Therefore, technology is the one which will make the collaboration between the customers and the firm happen in the right manner. It is at the heart of modern day advancements by which complementary strengths of several entities involved in industrial development together. What are the drivers of collaborative value? The 5 forces of competition we know: the threat of new entrants, threat of substitute products or services, bargaining power of buyers, bargaining power of suppliers, intensity of industry rivalry. But should we see only the competitive value in these things, or should we see the collaborative value? The intended consequences, if you see this only as the competitive strategy model, you will find that the principles are 3. Firms seeking competitive advantage must be better than the new entrants, get better than the substitute products, get the best possible value for and from the customers, drive suppliers to provide value and cope with volatility and rivalry. So the thrust is on getting the better of the better that is trying to enter the industry, get the better of the entities which are trying to redefine the relationship. And therefore, hyper-competitive firms are encouraged in the theory of competitive strategy. They try to stave off competition, they overcome substitute products, and mind you, this overcoming substitute products is not necessarily only through technology. If it were so, it may be a good augury. Instead, it could be through splurging of resources and expenses on marketing, trying to defend the position, in which case it is not a great idea to overcome better substitute products that would be coming in. Dictate to suppliers in good times as well as difficult times. Usher in sellers market, that is, create shortfalls and try to have better control over the way in which the market operates, and minimize industry rivalry, try to cartelize. So these are all the ill effects of trying to be hyper competitive in an industry. In this kind of model, there would be some incumbent firms who would be winners and some who would be losers, while the new entrants, substitutes, buyers and suppliers will be differentially impacted based on their own capability to sustain the pressures from the hyper-competitive firm. In comparison to that, if you look at the 5 drivers of collaborative value, you will get 5 significant benefits. 1, the value of co-integration, the value of co-development, the value of co-fulfillment, the value of co-expansion, and the value of co-saturation. These occur because of collaboration with the following entities: suppliers, innovators, customers, new entrants, and players within the industry. So we are going to look at this aspect of industry development and firm development in a much more positive way, that everybody has something to contribute to the other party, and therefore everybody can help in the process of developing value for the society. By leveraging the collaborative value drivers, a firm can ensure competitive operations because products are getting better all the time. It can optimize investments because investments are shared with other entities which are willing to participate in this development program. More innovative products and processes can be unleashed, and as a result you can have an enhanced customer choice and also develop a larger market. So as opposed to competitive strategy, which seeks to increase the value of the firm on a relative basis at the cost of related as well as competing stakeholders, collaborative strategy drives up the value of the firm and its stakeholders simultaneously, and it leads to sustainable growth. This is the advantage of having a generic collaborative strategy. Let us look at each of these aspects in greater detail. The first is the co-integration. In an ideal scenario, a firm can achieve maximum competitive efficiency with respect to its products if all the components and systems are manufactured in-house. We have seen earlier about strategic manufacturing approach, whether to have complete integration or complete outsourcing. And we also said that all things being same in respect of growing demand, a fully integrated development and manufacturing value chain operating at the highest scale possible is the dream of any monopoly player. However, there are restraints on that. The automobile industry in the mechanical age and the electronics industry in the digital age have demonstrated how outsourcing can actually help optimize investments and provide better value. But outsourcing also needs collaboration. A divided original equipment manufacturing and component industrial structure demonstrated how a maximization of respective competitive positions, which is caused essentially by non-sharing of respective positions on volumes and costs, could dilute mutual efficiencies. That is, component industry evolved independent of the automobile industry, although the components are made to the specifications of the end product manufacturer, or at times the end product manufacturer adjusts the product specifications to meet the component specifications. By and large, these have evolved as two different streams. As a result, the mutual synergy has not been achieved to the extent it should have been achieved. Similarly, in electronics industry, a complete farming out of all critical components and systems, if you take a smart device from camera sensors to displays, everything is farmed out. A complete farming out of all critical components and systems maximizes dependence on external manufacture. This is caused essentially by outsourcing both software and hardware, and it left some firms with only a few core competencies. The golden mean between a firm being completely self-reliant through integration and being totally dependent externally through outsourcing is provided by the concept of co-integration. It is not tapered integration, it is not quasi-integration, it is a different kind of mindset. It is based on the concept that limited co-exclusive business relationships between OEMs and suppliers provide for shared scale and scope so that they are dovetailed to collaborate rather than compete. Even in integration decisions, quasi-integration decisions, the idea is that the other entity, that is the component maker from an end product manufacturer's viewpoint, or the end product manufacturer from the component viewpoint, will collaborate only to the extent of transactional requirement. But in the philosophy of co-integration which I am proposing, both the entities come to the table with the philosophy that they must integrate amongst themselves so that there would be a better utility for the product development and product supply. So the intention is to collaborate rather than compete. So what are the benefits of co-integration? The benefits are in terms of collaborative strategic planning. That is, you would like to know where the product is moving, therefore how the components must be going. So in the case of an electric vehicle, when and what type of electric vehicles will be done? Will they be retrofitted electric vehicles, or will they be native zero-based development electric vehicles? All these things will be discussed a priori, that is at the very outset, between the company and the existing suppliers or proposed suppliers. So there is a collaborative strategic planning where the strategic planning of both the entities or both the entity groups will be aligned and working in alignment. Second, shared goals and ownership. The goal and ownership in this case of electric vehicle development would be to have a seamless phase in and phase out of the new vehicle and old vehicles respectively, and ensure that everybody is financially stable while serving the customers. It also requires openness to share risks and rewards. It is not I win, you lose the game. It is all I win, you also win the game kind of approach. And the fourth one is that OEMs and vendors should have preferred relationships so that the trust and judgmental acuity between the two parties is supported. The EV transformation is a perfect arena for co-integration. Phase out of pure IC engine related components must be accompanied by phase in of pure EV related components. So the first step should be to ask the likely phased out component makers to be ready for new entries. The first step in such an approach would be to ask the component makers who are likely to be threatened by the electric vehicle introduction about their strategic plans to get into a new business line of EV parts. And if their intention is positive, then collaborate with them. Lay out your own plans for electric vehicle development and encourage them and inspire them to come up with their own electric component making perspectives. And that will enable timely phase-in of pure EV related components even as they are moving out their dated technology IC engine parts. So whenever you have industrial transformations involving for a period simultaneous coexistence of the old and new infrastructures, we need to adopt the approach of co-integration. It is a viable format to optimize resources while driving growth. Second, co-development. The initiative for Ultra Notebook is one of the few coordinated strategic technological developments of traditional desktop and laptop computer makers that is driven somewhat paradoxically by the chip manufacturer. Intel took the initiative to develop computers which house the Intel chip, and that was made to withstand the competition from tablet computers, and at that point of time Intel didn't have a great position in the tablet computers. Co-development, however, needs to be a much more widespread and much more positive initiative. As the technology of component keeps increasing, the technology of system also should keep increasing. But generally, the technology of component develops faster in the initial years, and technology of system lacks. In ideal co-development, both work as close to each other as possible so that this curvilinear approach will be transformed into a linear approach. The concept is that technologies of components and systems will develop at an exponential phase, making specialization the forte of outsourcing. It also makes the well-integrated OEM provide the scale economics for all value chain players. The current paradigm is one of fits and starts, by which technology flourishes at some points of time but withers at some other points of time. Mostly it is uncoordinated, and at times it is the brilliance of the individual component makers or the end product makers that drives how the development of components and the product would move forward. If computer makers were to take the challenge of making tablets thinner than smartphones, it would require the coordinated effect of everyone from displays to the chips to the sensors to the integrated circuit boards, the semiconductor chips. It requires breakthrough generations of all of these components and that would require technology that is to be invested in a simultaneous manner by all the players. It is not manufacturing as we thought about in co-integrated. It is about development. That is at the root of this co-development process. Alongside, you need to have operating systems which need to be developed continuously instead of looking at developing them every 6 months or 1 year. Breakthrough changes have to happen so that leading edge connectivity and computing power could be provided for those kinds of products. Co-development is based on the concept that co-exclusive development relationships between OEMs and suppliers will enable first-time right development of both the components and the product. And this would save costs and advance revenues when the developments are of breakthrough nature. If the developments are of breakthrough nature, there is every likelihood that there would be risks of such development. Co-development tries to minimize those risks very much. Next is co-development. The force of substitute products is a key competitive force. It makes existing products obsolete and even modifies existing industry structure. However, with co-development, firms and their vendors can make the substitute products a positive force that is welcome in the marketplace and also welcome for the industry. These entities proactively identify unfulfilled needs as well as emerging needs. Secondly, new products that cater to a different way of fulfilling the need will help in handling product transition in a collaborative way. This is superior to the traditional practice of fighting the inevitable change or obsolescence. Traditional techniques such as BCG matrix or BCG grid are dated practices. They expect products to be in the 4 grids of dogs, question mark, cash cows, etc. But these are not approaches wherein products have to be necessarily filled into different such grids. It is ideal if every product is made into a product which is positive in terms of cash generation, positive in terms of technological change. That happens only when every firm understands the power of collaboration and brings in new technologies, and when that happens as part of the total value chain collaboration amongst various entities. We have seen lots of changes in the watch chain. It has been an inexorable movement. But had the watch battery been improved along with the total watch technology, then the quartz watch industry would have had much longer staying power. Similarly, whenever you are looking at digital watches, if instead of getting powered every day, they are allowed to be powered after 7 days or so based on new charging technologies, then they would have higher leverage with the customers. So the concept of co-development is that end product maker needs the support of the vendors and the vendors need the support of the end product maker to be able to bring in newer substitute technologies, newer substitute products ahead of competition getting introduced with a view to dominate the industry. Instead of 1 or 2 firms trying to dominate the industry, the entire industry tries to upgrade itself based on co-development. It is a timely move with a futuristic approach. The benefits of co-development are 4. 1. It provides shared technological foresight. 2. It provides standalone R&D capabilities for the industry. 3. It supports joint product development and testing. And 4th, it protects mutual intellectual property. Autonomous vehicle is a perfect area for co-development. Most of the components and systems of autonomy have to be tested in the field. Co-development between the component makers and the electric or autonomous vehicle will make the autonomy component development achieve perfect state of success. The higher the level of breakthrough technology, the greater is the need for collaborative co-development. Now let's look at co-fulfillment. The traditional view of the market has been that the customers know what they want and companies can find out what the customers want through structured market research. It is also believed that customers accept or reject depending upon how the market research findings are translated into practice. Co-fulfillment is a completely different approach. It requires companies to live customer lives and proactively discover not only customer needs but their potential usage and experience profiles. Steve Jobs overturned the established practice and demonstrated that brilliantly designed and manufactured Apple products could create new needs or fulfill existing needs better. Co-fulfillment establishes a leading level of competitive advantage. That was possible because Steve had an uncanny talent for thinking like a customer even before the customer could think of the need. iPhone is a classic example. So was iPod. This collaborative process generates a far more intensive and far more effective understanding and hence far more effective fulfillment of customer needs. It's a design thinking process discovered by Steve Jobs decades ago while developing the iPhones. But he didn't expressly work with the customers. He foresaw the customers' needs even before customers themselves could think of it. There lay his genius. Steve Jobs could also create an industrial value chain that shared and complied with his passion for perfection and elegance. This requires an enlightened and non-egoistic approach by all the stakeholders to analyze and question themselves at the hands of consumers, directly or through experimental simulation. When a firm imagines new needs, new technologies, and new products, it automatically seeks co-fulfillment with all its as well as its competitors' customers. Co-fulfillment is a continuous process. Even Apple held on for too long to its pet positions on lower screen size and slowed down co-fulfillment with customers. Because of this, company lost some momentum. The concept of co-fulfillment is that a cluster of all the firms in the industry not only work together but also individually and collectively with the consumers to identify the current and future needs. Here, the issue is one of satisfying the customers as a group rather than a customer getting satisfied by a firm. It is no longer a dyadic relationship between a firm and little group of customers. It is a more universal networking of the firms as well as the customers. The benefits of co-fulfillment are many, but four important aspects. It promotes design thinking by whatever name you call it. Second, it provides first-hand experience of performance for the customers as well as for the firm. And the product concept and at times the solution itself gets tested and validated on the go on a real-time basis. Fourthly, it provides continuous improvement for the company in terms of its products and services and for customers in terms of the experiences. It requires, however, on the part of the firm and its leaders, a startup approach. They should be agile. They should be willing to sit with the customers, work with the customers and design with the customers, identify the latent issues, even identify unknown issues and find creative solutions. It also requires abandonment of the traditional approach of sales and marketing, which says that I have the product, I have to create a perception, a halo around the product and then market it to the customer. The locus of connection between the firm and the customers must shift from sales transaction to customer experience. Co-expansion is another aspect of the new collaborative framework that I propose. In the normal industry structure, it is rare to have all the constituents of the industrial ecosystem grow or expand at a synchronized pace. Every firm will have its own strengths and weaknesses and its own financial capabilities. Even with co-integration and co-development, various stakeholders may choose to grow differently because of these factors. There are generally two types of stakeholders: mono-industry stakeholders, multi-industry stakeholders. In mono-industry stakeholder system, industry growth motivates all the stakeholders equally because they have a common alignment towards the industry and its products and the customer base. Technological change impacts all the players equally. However, because of the financial position or leadership mindset or the strength and weakness of the company, stakeholders may grow differently. The end product manufacturer in such a case needs to take the initiative to align all players onto the same growth path. In respect of multi-industry stakeholders, growth of different industries motivates different stakeholders differently. Because each industry is completely different in terms of the products and the markets, growth potential of each industry would vary. And the higher the growth rate of the industry, the greater will be the motivation within the stakeholders to develop themselves or to upgrade themselves or to expand themselves. Different industries also experience different types of technological change, some rapid, some slow. As a result, different stakeholders seek to participate in the growth of different industries in different manners. OEM and component makers in this case need to enter into collaborations transcending industry boundaries. We have at the core a semiconductor, but the same semiconductors or the variants of that semiconductor family powers products as diverse as digital watches, cameras, televisions, smartphones, cars, even refrigerators. The concept of co-expansion is that despite stakeholders having relationships across the industries, the stakeholders of each industry must pull together for growth and mutual development. That is the important lesson out of co-expansion as a proposed methodology. The requirements for co-expansion are that the firm and its stakeholders must have the broadness and the vision to look beyond opportunistic growth across industries, or the willingness to co-expand capacities to cater to all industries. Today's circumstances dictate that semiconductors are required across several industries. Because the industry is in a sweet spot, the semiconductor industry may say that whatever growth I have is adequate. But a positive looking user segment as well as the semiconductor segment will collaborate to co-expand the capacities so that everybody benefits from such co-expansion. So industry forecasts are vital ingredients. Relative viability of different sectors need to be understood so that together they can raise the viability of the industry set. Resources for expansion must be found, and they will be found when the viability of the end industries is very much portrayed well, and the equity of relationships have to be established. When one core sector supports other peripheral sectors, the relationships must be equitable, not equal. Co-expansion requires on the part of the firm and its leaders to bat for the growth of all the stakeholders through capacity balancing. Leverage technology to meet the needs of multiple stakeholders. That is, everybody should be concerned about everybody's growth. We talked about firms keeping industry's interest above the self-interest. Here we are talking about broader industrial imperatives, broader industrial concerns, and broader industrial well-being above the requirements of just one industry. And we also need to leverage technology to meet the needs of multiple stakeholders. A novel material that is developed by a company such as DuPont may be useful in a number of industries. A sensor may be useful in a number of industries. So we have to leverage such core technologies, and every industry must collaborate with each other, not to monopolize the technology, but to diffuse the technology to as many industries as possible. Co-expansion will be driven by the stakeholders' capability to smoothen the demand fluctuations of multiple industries. Co-saturation. Co-saturation is another interesting concept with reference to the emerging industries. Sunrise industries evoke interest, but they do not immediately attract big-ticket investments by firms which are already there in similar product lines. They are the firms actually better placed to take those little risks of stimulating the sunrise industries. However, they watch as startups take up that challenge. However, once opportunity seems realizable, this space is occupied rapidly, not only by additional startups but also by the existing companies acquiring the startups. In which case there are two types of entry. One is the acquisition-led entry, and second is the collaborative entry. In the acquisition-led entry, smaller startups take larger risks. They develop sunrise technologies on their own. But when these risks are rewarded, they see the larger firms rushing into this space, and the startups get acquired depending upon the mindset of startup founders. Porter's theory says that such excessive competition increases competitive intensity in an industry and drives down industry profits. And in his framework, firms must therefore adopt competitive strategies that edge out small firms and dominate the available market. The whole theory is biased in favor of established firms. They do nothing when their responsibility for seeding such startup development is very much required of them. They don't do anything. They let the startups take the risk. But once these startups come to fruition, they rush in to acquire and become dominant or big. Collaborative entry, on the other hand, is a different approach. It welcomes newer and additional entrants operating in sunrise sectors. The more saturated a market is, the belief is that the larger would be the market and the faster its growth. Firms must, in collaborative strategy, pool their strengths to accomplish far more than they can do individually. In this process, established firms as well as startups collaborate with each other from the beginning. If only two-wheeler majors collaborated with electric vehicle startups for the last 7 to 8 years, then the electric vehicle situation in India would have been far more dominating. Unfortunately, collaborative entry was not considered by the established majors, and the startups were allowed to take their own time to develop consistent with their lower levels of resources. So co-saturation helps companies, industries avoid such sectarian, such narrow-minded or myopic vision. Co-saturation is the concept that incumbent firms must view entry of new players or entry of new technologies as an opportunity to saturate the market together and in collaboration. It should be seen as a means to expand as well as diversify product range. Market share in such co-saturated markets is less important than expanding volumes for every player. We have several examples of this happening in many fields. The requirements of co-saturation essentially veer around the willingness to specialize in sunrise sectors and the willingness to strike collaborative alliances with long-term prospects. 4 requirements of co-saturation are presented here. 1. Commitment to sunrise sector. 2. Proactive alliance making intent and capability. 3rd, complementary competencies. The established company has several strengths to its credit. Those strengths must be used along with the technological creativity which the newer divisions or newer ideas bring. And there must be timely operationalization. It should not be seen as a new product cutting into the established company's established product range. It should be seen as a market expanding move based on the co-saturation of currently existing technologies and prospectively emerging technologies. This requires on the part of the firm and its leader to keep relationships above immediate benefits, complete leverage of each other's capabilities. Development, manufacturing and delivery of vaccines in record time and in record volumes is reflective of the power of co-saturation. Let's take a quick look at the COVID-19 vaccine development. The vaccines were developed at warp speed through collaborative efforts between R&D laboratories, pharmaceutical corporations, contract manufacturing organizations and governments. And this exemplifies co-saturation. Normally, a vaccine will take at least 10 years. This has been the trend for all the vaccines so far. But given the magnitude of impact COVID-19 pandemic had, every government and every firm with some kind of technological bent of mind moved in fast to get the vaccines developed. As a result, companies such as Pfizer and BioNTech did the joint development. Similarly, Moderna did it with the university. Indian Bharat Biotech did collaboration with ICMR. And AstraZeneca did it with the collaboration of the Zenner Institute of Oxford University. Therefore, the vaccine investments were of high level and high speed. And this was supported US government's Operation Warp Speed. The government of the United States of America pledged as much as $8 billion to speed up vaccine development for COVID-19. Moderna got $2.5 billion. Sanofi with GSK got $2 billion. Pfizer with BioNTech was offered $1.95 billion, but it decided to do things on its own. Novavax got $1.6 billion. Johnson & Johnson $1.5 billion. AstraZeneca $1.2 billion. As a result of this, we had vaccines within 10 months of the start of the program in each case. BioNTech plus Pfizer gave it in 10 months. The Jenner Institute along with AstraZeneca gave it in a similar time frame, and simultaneously
There was tie-up between AstraZeneca and Serum Institute of India to manufacture the vaccine for the global requirements, including India. Bharat Biotech collaborated with ICMR to develop co-vaccine, again in 10 to 11 months. So the fact that with co-saturation and of course co-development, companies could take just 8 to 10 months to develop a vaccine which would normally take 8 to 12 years speaks volumes of this important methodology. And some of the vaccines, especially the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, were developed with mRNA technology for the first time in the vaccine history. These are the most remarkable benefits of co-saturation, tellingly illustrated to us by the vaccine development. As product life cycles become shorter and investments to retool a facility become larger, a generic strategy of only competing to vanquish others is a less relevant option than collaborating and competing selectively and meaningfully. Product life cycles are becoming shorter. Investments are becoming larger. Trying to compete with one another is of less importance than collaborating and competing selectively and meaningfully. The 5 concepts which I have outlined are of great importance in developing a collaborative, competitive framework. Collaboration driver in the first place is co-integration. OEMs and suppliers can grow in scale and scope together with that collaboration thrust. Under co-development, co-exclusive developments lead to greater efficiency for both OEMs and suppliers. In co-fulfillment, companies work with consumers and industry to maximize developmental benefits. In co-expansion, vendors all along the industrial value chains collaborate to ensure simultaneous readiness and competencies. In co-saturation, we build value with all the players, that is other OEMs and suppliers. Treating all the stakeholders in the industry, be it suppliers, customers, innovators or new entrants, as helpful partners in expanding and diversifying product market scope works to the benefit of the firm. Industry competition should not be considered as a win-lose game. That is, the firm wins, all the other stakeholders lose. It should not be seen as the survival of the fittest game. As proposed in this lecture, generic collaborative strategy is an alternative framework whereby by co-integrating, co-developing, co-fulfilling, co-expanding and co-saturating, everyone elevates the game and serves the customers even better with more products and services that are more fulfilling than ever. The generic collaborative theory is positive for firms and industry as a whole. It helps develop more competent and more viable industrial ecosystems, which will serve customers and economy better. Collaboration as part of and integral to competition is the only way in which resources can be better utilized, products can be better developed, and the society benefits in a faster frame of time. Thank you. Thank you for the attention. We'll meet again in the next week's lectures.